Evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. I'm John DeWanzik, and this is the regular meeting of the Avon Lake Board of Municipal Utilities. We're starting at 7:45 tonight because we had a work session before this that was open to the public. Everybody that was here then is here now, and nobody has been added. Tonight, I am joined by board members, Mr. Ricky and Mrs. Schnabel to my right, and Mr. Abram and Mr. Rush to my left. Also, Chief Utility Executive, Mr. Monroe, is to my right. And at the table in front of me, we have Business and Financial Coordinator, Mr. Logan. And to his left, we have Chief of Utility Operations, Mr. Urinich. Also at the table is outside counsel, Mr. Tony Coyne. And from the public, we have Mr. Nick Mondello and Mr. Bill Zimmerman in the audience. And that's us. Tonight's meeting is being streamed on Facebook and YouTube, and there's an opportunity for public input on those platforms. If you just enter a comment, Mr. Urinich will keep tabs of that and bring it to the board's attention at the time of public speakers. There's one of those in the beginning and one towards the end. We'll try to address every comment that comes in. We have a full board here tonight. That means it takes at least 3 votes to approve any motion that's made. All votes are taken by voice vote, with the exception of motion to go into executive session, which there is one of those tonight. And at that time, we will use a roll call vote. So with that having been said, I made notes tonight, so I don't even have to ask you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 5th meeting. Are there any comments on those that you would like to have heard at this time? Hearing none, they are approved as submitted. Then let's move on to the aforementioned public speakers. First off, anybody in cyber world, Mr. Urinich. Okay, next we have 2 visitors in the audience. Anyone with public comment? Okay, we will move on to then correspondence. Mr. Monroe.
I do not have any correspondence this evening.
Fantastic. That brings us to expenditures on your goldenrod sheets. Would someone like to make the motion to approve the expenditure?
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Abram?
I move to approve Avon Lake Regional Water expenses from November 1st through November 14th, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ricky. Discussion. Mrs. Schnabel, hand up first.
I did have a couple of questions. On the Fund 701, line item 46, lab analysis at the water filtration plant. It's probably on there all the time. I just haven't paid attention. Is that something we send out?
Correct. There are still some samples that need to be sent out, the specialized ones, like the disinfection byproducts.
Okay. And is that monthly or is that?
Typically they're quarterly.
Okay.
There are some samples that go out monthly, but the bigger ones tend to be the quarterly samples.
Okay. And then down near the bottom, kind of those last 3 line items, are any of those related? They're all different vendors, but like it's, those are all ones that I don't recognize either.
Those are annual software renewals.
Okay, that's what I thought.
For instance, the Esri Incorporated is the ArcGIS. That's our main engineering software that they do. It has our GIS database. They do a lot of their CAD in that. So that's what those are.
All three are
Yes.
software.
Yes.
Okay.
On that one, well, Mrs. Schnabel already brought that up. Fusible, that I inferred that it was probably software, but is that something for asset tracking? Is that?
It's
Well, I can
it's the
infer from-
equipment watch is the name of it. And that's for when we update all of our hourly rates for our employees and equipment. The equipment watch gives you can punch in all of the data related to a specific piece of equipment, whether it's a automobile, a truck, heavy duty truck, a bulldozer, excavator, and it gives you what that hourly rate is so that we can bill appropriately.
I see.
So that's what that software is.
In other words, when we do the work for somebody.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's specifically like the ETLs, or there's we're billing those funds, those custodial funds. Warco, same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Mr. Abram. Oh, are you still on this? issue?
Sorry, I think I do have one more.
Okay.
Wait.
Hold on.
1 second. Yes, it is on Fund 721, line item like 25 and 26. I don't know if those two are related or.
They're not related. 25 W.W. Williams, that's who does our does all of our maintenance on our generators, but they had a repair, and I think Mr. Ernst can explain the detail. The other one, line item 26, that's our pond
Right
pump
here, okay.
out here that needed to be repaired.
Okay, I didn't know if that was like the pond over it. So that's our generator?
At the Bridgeside pump station.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, gotcha.
It had a control board that went bad, so they had to buy a replacement control board, and that's why the expense was
Hi.
a bit
Yep,
larger.
okay, gotcha. That is all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. 701 Water Fund. The 5758, what was the need for the saw cut? Those items?
57, that one is, that's for putting in, we're connecting into the new subdivision water line to do the park improvements at Walker Road Park. So we had to saw cut that concrete so that we could run a 8-inch water main through there.
That's how
I
much
saw
the
the
other one?
piping over there.
Yes. That's related to the license agreement that we did with the city of Bay Village last year, or
Remember that.
earlier this year, I guess, where they allowed us to put our repeater for our meters on their
Okay.
tower at their service station. And we were going to do the improvements to the Walker Road Park, because that's a joint effort between the city and Bay Village. But that was in exchange for that license.
So 8 inches is a pretty big
Mhm.
water line. What's that gonna be used for?
So the 8 inch is gonna feed all the way back. They intend to, we are gonna have fire hydrants, make sure there's adequate fire protection back there. They do have the bathrooms and drinking fountain, but they also want to do improvements to the soccer fields. They have expressed an interest in putting in 2-inch service for sprinkler systems. So since we were going to be doing the work, the nominal increase in pipe size was very minimal. So
And will this be looped somewhere?
not right now. Right now, it'll have an auto flusher on it that it cycles on and automatically will flush the lines so that we keep our chlorine up and keep the water quality. But whenever there's future improvements to the west, kind of in the area of the horse farm.
In other words, more houses.
Yes, more houses that eventually someday would come. There is an 8-inch, and then that would complete the loop.
Okay, there's no news on any of that.
No.
There is a lot of houses going in on, I think, another horse farm that was on Krebs Road, sort of pretty close to the same north-south line as the one that's on Walker Road.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
believe that was a horse farm too back there. That's why all the streets have like horsey names
Okay.
back in there. Okay, thank you for that.
The next one on.
Mr. Abram?
on Forest Boulevard,
What about Forest?
Which number?
58.
Number 58
Forest,
on Forest, yes. That was, I believe they were pushing, in the whole hog was stuck. Yes.
Yeah.
So the push, it's called the whole hog is the brand name, but it's their push machine, and the push machine got stuck. So we had to cut it and excavate it. So
Yeah, they're paying for it then?
Yeah.
They're gonna reimburse us?
no, that was us. That was our staff did that. We were pushing a water service.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right, thank you.
If we were pushing across at Forest, we were pushing across Lake Road, I believe.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Anyone else? A couple from me. What is this QV 3-foot rotary vacuum? What is that?
Number,
I'm sorry, page 1701, CH Reed Inc. Number, sorry,
28.
28.
28, there you go.
Mr.
So
Aaron?
that is, it's not actually a repair. That was a purchase of a piece of lab equipment. Some with the one test for oil and grease, for us to be able to run that requires a vacuum. And that was for the purchase of that. In the
Okay.
past, we had been able to run that test ourselves. They had kind of stopped doing that for a while. And because of a couple of instances we've had where we wanted to be able to run that test ourselves in our own lab, we wanted to get the equipment to get that test being able to be run in our own lab.
Okay, so that's a capital item.
It was actually a purchase. It did
Yeah.
get,
And then
labeled.
below that, the next item from Jones Chemical, 10,500 for the chlorine. Is this in the form of hypochlorite, or is it
yeah.
just
Our standard chlorine gas, the 1-ton cylinders.
okay? But we're going to be phasing that out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is this still a higher price than previous years, or?
It's definitely higher than previous years. We can't say it's at the peak price anymore, which is a good thing, but it's
Yeah.
still well above what traditionally
Okay.
it would have been.
And what do we do, just out of curiosity, because chlorine gas obviously is very toxic? How do we store that and safeguard it and so on?
It's stored in the chlorine room.
So it's not outside or?
No,
anything like
it's
that?
all
It's
enclosed.
not
Secure.
subject to vehicle impact or anything?
No,
And it's a secured area.
Okay.
requires the code to get in.
All right, and then we talked about the equipment watch light, that software, that's also found in 721 for sewers. And that's all I have. So if there are no further comments.
I have just one.
Go ahead, Mr. Ricky.
Last page, back, construction, water construction. Item 10, illuminating company. What do we, that wasn't part of the Great Lakes scope that we had to pay the electric company for the service?
That represents setting up the 3-phase electric service for our Tech Win project.
Oh, technically, I'm
Yeah.
thinking it's at the water treatment
No.
plant.
No, it's the.
I'm sorry.
The sodium hypochlorite. That's so, once we have the plans approved, electrically approved by First Energy, then they issue a permit. And in order for them to fully issue it, we have to pay them the permit fee for establishing the electric service.
Who
there.
does the work?
They do.
They actually do.
Yeah,
We
so-
have to pay to establish the service.
Yeah, just to establish, so
Really?
we'll have everything there. Once we're ready to have it energized, that's when they'll come and install the service, just like we did with our additional storage.
Okay,
building.
I'm thinking this was part of Great Lakes. That's why I was wondering why it was not, maybe not
No,
included with
thank-
Great Lakes over there.
You're showing your age, because it used to be they would just do it.
Yeah, they would
Like
just
now
do it for me.
I
I
mean,
mean, put a
It's
mask
been
up and they come
20
hook
or
it up.
25 years since you've had to pay handsomely.
Yeah, okay, no, that's all. I just was thinking that should be part of Great Lakes' price.
Yeah, you would think, but since they're gonna sell you electricity. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. The next item is the aforementioned infrastructure technician, Mr. Urinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to present this as an information item, effective November 13th. Mike Lazeski was an operator at the water filtration plant, and there was an opening with the engineering services, an infrastructure technician. Based on his qualifications, he was actually very qualified for this, and he had expressed interest in transferring to that. Jack and Jared had conducted interviews, felt that he would be a good fit, so he is going to be moving over to be part of their group over there. He was a plant operator step 1, doing a lateral transfer step 4 of infrastructure technician is what most closely matched up with that. So he will start at 27-28 per hour.
Okay, and is this gentleman, capable of licensing as we were previously talking about? So he has a potential career with the utility.
He license?
Currently holds a class 1. I did not get to talk to him today. He had just taken his class 2 on the water. But yeah, as far as being an infrastructure technician with Jack, several of his previous jobs had been construction management, project leader for different construction companies. So he'll be well versed.
Well, good. Sounds like a good move. All right. Any questions other than that? Okay, Mr. Urinich, why don't you go on with lead service line identification letters? You don't have to read it, but kind of give us a summary and, tell us what your thoughts are of further action.
Sure. So as part of the lead and copper rule revisions, which there was 2 deadlines that were a part of that rule. October 16th was when we had to have a complete inventory of all the materials of every single service line throughout our distribution system. We have about 9,000, I think 800 services throughout the city of Avon Lake. All but 2,100 of those we have detailed records on. We know exactly from the point it leaves the water main to the meter to the customer's home. We are aware of what that material is. We had 2,100 locations that are unknowns. So after submitting the inventory of all of our service line materials, the next step is to start identifying those unknowns. We have until November of 2027 to complete that inventory. So each year that you have either a lead service line in your system, a galvanized requiring replacement, or an unknown, you need to send notifications to each of those customers. So November 16th was the deadline to distribute those notifications to any customers that have unknown service lines. We currently did not have any known lead service lines or any galvanized requiring replacements. We have the 2,100 unknowns. So we distributed a letter notifying them. Part of the process, we included a survey to each of those residents. To make sure we fully comply with all of the EPA requirements, both now and in the future, we're looking for multiple points along the service line. Identifying our section, one point in that section, because it's typically close to the street between the curb stop and the water main, or the water meter and the water main. So we will, throughout the next year, start identifying those. We want to see what the material is as it leaves our meter or past the curb stop. And we also want to see what it is inside the customer's home as it enters. There's been various iterations of the rule, and some of the rules have not yet been finalized, but the EPA has mentioned multiple points along the customer-owned portion. So we feel if we can get the material as it enters the home and as it starts the customer-owned portion, we feel like that's going to set us up in a good position for any modifications they could have to that rule in the future. Those letters went out last Wednesday and Thursday. So far, we've had a total of 49 people complete the online survey. We've received quite a few phone calls and emails, and we've been working to address those. So I guess our ultimate goal throughout the next year, we would like to have all of those identified, or as many as possible identified by this time next year. So we're not going to be printing and distributing that many letters for anybody that has an unknown.
And you would assume, or could we assume that, whatever action is taken on these will be in 26, not 25? So we're just kind of like going to find out the magnitude of the problem with the 2100 and then set up a program for the following year.
Mr. Yurnich and I have had this discussion multiple times. We're really approaching this similar to sewer separations. What was the biggest thing when I came in was the inspections that we had to have done. And we had all of these unknowns out there of whether they had to separate or not. So getting the inspections was the first step to identifying what actually needs done. So in 2025, that's what we're trying. That's our short-term goal. Yeah, we have 10 years that if we to replace any lead service lines, but we really want to strategically implement this over the next couple of years. So if we have a realistic goal in 2025 of completely eliminating the 2100 unknowns, and so now they're known.
Known or changed.
Yes, and so that's the goal in 25. So that way that helps us to formulate our plan for the next step.
Okay, and I assume then at budget time next year, we'd be budgeting for we have, I'll bet you there's no more than a couple hundred, but like 10% of what you have. So you'd say whatever it is, $1,000, $2,000 each times.
There's a couple of ways of addressing it. One of them being when we put out our water bundle projects, we have specific bid line items in there. So so we're already ahead of the game that, it's a contract that if we do find a handful of them, it's already bid out as part of the project that they could be
And
addressed.
you don't have to tear things up twice.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And coordinating with the city as well on their any street pavings.
Good. Question?
So if you received one of those letters, is it unknown on the customer owned side or on the city side?
Could be both. If you received a letter, it's definitely unknown on the customer side. It's also a likelihood that it was unknown on ours as well. From whatever time those homes were built, depending upon what year it was, it could have been, the city did not have a detailed inspection report from when it was installed, or we did not keep a detailed record. The EPA needs to have something definite. It's not just an assumption that you could make, but.
Okay. If that's it, then let's go on to project updates. Mr. Urinich, again, give us the highlights. If you got pictures, that's even more better, that kind of thing.
For the power plant update, no real big news. It's looking like mid-December is when they're kind of zeroing it in for the next implosion.
Did you say December?
Yes, mid-December. Obviously, it'll be weather dependent and all of that, but they will be distributing notices. It sounds like Avon Lake is going to be sending out notices to everybody 10 days in advance of the approximate date, and then they'll have, once the final determination is made, they will let everyone know on that.
Okay.
For the ETL design services, we had a meeting with Bramhall Engineering last Friday. Offered some comments on some of the sheets. They're looking at the end of November to have that completed. Did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is to remind everyone there's 6 new sheets for realigning this, but in our meeting, we also they were seeking comments from us because there were some clarifications they needed. And there is a couple of the sheets that we are going to tweak the alignment so that we don't have to deal with a couple of the property owners. But we are continuing that. They'll have those to us by the end of November for our final comments. in the legal descriptions so that we can proceed with our easement acquisitions. And I spoke with Connie Carr regarding the updated agreement, and we've got to meet to discuss that, because that'll, at the same time that those are ongoing, we're going to have our negotiations with our bulk customers on the cooperative agreement. So
With regard to those, places where we don't have to deal with the owners, that kind of thing, have we learned anything for future right-of-way acquisitions that would avoid the whole matter altogether?
I think specifically to some of the property owners, yes. For instance, one of them, the changes, it was a relatively simple change, but we have to show it on the print, it was the temporary easement. So instead of having 15 feet on either side of the trench, we shifted in a certain area to have 30 feet on one side, so we didn't have to go onto this property for a temporary easement. That could prove to be troublesome in negotiating it. So that's one example. The simple answer to your question is yes, we have learned a few things regarding these easement acquisitions.
Well, that would be one of those things in the quality initiative, that we have a procedure for acquiring right-of-ways that, seeks to minimize future headaches. I know we had several of them on some of these things that have gone to the south, because they go so far that inevitably things come up. Okay, Mr. Urinich, continue, please.
All right, it's picture time.
All right.
So this is right next to where the new chemical feed structure is being built. That is the raw water line that brings water into the treatment plant and goes underneath that area. They're excavating around that because they were going to be forming a new meter vault, and there's going to be a chemical injection there as well. So you can see they're excavating through some shale there. This is forming the rebar, getting ready to form the actual vault itself. Just a little higher version of that. To the top of the screen, that is the pad for the chemical feed building. There's actually going to be, the rest of the pad is going to be extended once they get this vault constructed. That is the alum, going to be the alum storage area in that part of the chemical feed building. And yeah, just continuation with pouring of the pad alongside that building. I believe that was going to be the hypochlorite feed area that was in that last picture. For the resurfacing of the clear wells, as you can see on the left, they've completed all of the removal of the previous sealant that was on there. One of the things that was uncovered was a little deterioration of the concrete between clear wells 5 and 6. That is being repaired this week. There was an epoxy material they were going to be putting down, and after that is cured and weather dependent, then they will be applying the new sealant, and we should expect to see another 30 to 40 years of not having to worry about this again.
Okay. Anything on SCADA that you, I did want to ask you, you had mentioned in your write-up for the meeting here, the number 57 stone represents some of the foundation. Can you go back to the picture and show us? Is that there to
Did we
view?
include a picture of that? I don't know if we had an actual picture of that. So on the existing filter building, one of the difficulties that was that they ran into, it's not shown in that picture, but the as-builts that we had from previous project had shown that the filters were constructed slab on the shale. They got to the one corner of the building and it was found that that was not the case. It was filled with 57s, and they were having to come up with shoring that would keep that stone. They didn't want to continue excavating, have that gravel sliding out from underneath the concrete and risk weakening the structure. So that did delay that project area a little bit. Obviously, they've still got other work that they can perform throughout the project, but they're going to have to design some shoring to contain those stones.
In
And then
other
they could-
words, permanent shoring, not false work.
yeah,
You'll leave it in the ground.
correct.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering what were the possibilities. Now, it sounds like that would have been previously disturbed soil. I don't know what was on that site before that was built, but it might be worthwhile to look in the archives, see what you have. As I see it, this is like, again, something that wants to last a very long time with no maintenance at all. So whatever we're doing, we should take like the gold-plated alternative rather than spray some gunite down
Here's the
there.
bronze.
Hope for the best, So I would be in favor of really doing it right, because you don't want to dig that up again.
Yeah. I figured the industrial size container of Flex Seal would be enough, so.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that guy shows you, it works on water even while it's running.
Right.
Okay, anything you want to tell us about the skating remarks
Chairman,
about
I had a
SCADA?
I had a question about the mud mat. What
Oh,
was that mud mat do?
That just gives them a cleaner area to work on. It's just a thinner layer of concrete that they'll put down, so that way they're not continuously tromping through the mud, and it isn't a structural
they did that
foundation
under
necessarily.
the big tank that's in the field over there on the south side of Lake Road. They do a mud mats so that they level the mud,
Yeah, okay.
literally mud, and then when they put the concrete down, they can, assure uniform thickness so that it doesn't have the structural flaws of having thin spots and so on. So that's
That's what it is.
when it's critical to have like the strength, you do that as an extra thing.
That's important. Thank you.
Just a quick update on the SCADA communication upgrade. Spoke with a representative from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and she had offered up a couple of dates to meet with our OT integrator, the one that handles the SCADA network. They had a scheduling conflict when she had come out before and weren't able to be on site to go through the analysis. So we've got a couple of dates in December that as soon as I hear back from Data Command, we'll get those scheduled and complete that, and then we can go over the results of what she had found.
Good. Questions from anyone? All right, that brings us around to the CAE report, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have a report this evening.
Any members have reports or miscellaneous? Mr. Ricky?
Yes, last Wednesday night, it was Wednesday night, I attended the Building and Utilities Committee meeting at City Hall. And I really was there to be there for the unfinished business, which was the demolition ordinance was supposed to come out that night. The meeting started with OPEC presentation. The Director of Resilience and Sustainability was there from NOPEC. It was kind of interesting to hear her talk, but it went on and on and on. Then we got to the demolition ordinance and it was tabled because it got so late. So we never got the demolition ordinance put together yet. They're still working on it, and they've kind of established that the third Wednesday of each month will be their meeting at 7:00 in council chambers. So I will plan to continue to attend those until the board decides I should do something else. But like I say, it was a long meeting. I learned a lot about OPEC.
Yeah, NOPEC.
NOPEC,
right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, OPEC, I was
No.
picturing.
No, NOPEC.
Yeah.
But it was
Uh,
interesting, but it was really, I was kind of more interested in the demolition ordinance.
Well, let me ask you this, you're creating an ordinance, are they giving you a draft to like?
I have not got a draft of
Well,
it.
that's
no.
that's how we do when we have.
No, but they're still
regulations
trying
here,
to- They're still trying to put it together. There's some questions the law director has to make or decisions. And I still haven't heard, we never even really talked about it, but I really have not heard whether this ordinance will take place for this next implosion. I don't think it legally can at this point, but I don't know. It just didn't go anywhere. We just tabled it. And
I don't know how long of a regulation it would be, but if it runs more than a couple pages, it's not easily done in a couple
No,
of weeks,
No, they're still working on it. Two entities kind of each did it, and then they kind of put it together, and that's what they're in the process of doing right now, is putting it together with the law director's review. So that's where it went. And again, that was the extent of our
Well, they
couple
might
hours.
make it, I don't know, again,
Yeah.
how complicated it is, but you make a good point.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
but I did attend that. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ricky. Is there anyone else
Yeah.
with, yes, Mr.
I
Avon?
just wanted to present to the board an article from Water World magazine discussing, informing us about the next month is the 50th anniversary of the Safe Drinking Water Act, which was passed in 1974. And it's one that regulates all the utilities throughout the country, and including the most recent lead replacement program. So it's interesting. There's one section here that says that a growing population and an escalating shift towards resource-intensive patterns have seen a six-fold increase in freshwater demand over the past 100 years. So freshwater is the key.
It is. And look at the population of the world, even in either of our lifetimes, it's gone up a lot.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have no report, and that makes it time for public speakers.
No
Anybody?
comments.
Anybody? Mr. Zimmerman.
William Zimmerman. I've done some checking on a variety of issues that's going on with the power plant sale and the TIF area that's coming down from Lake Road through just behind Shields Road and stuff. Had an opportunity to take some photos, found some unusual places. I've had a chance to share that with Rob. Some building of materials, some storage areas, drainage areas. I don't know if these been remediated in the past, if they'll have to be in the future. As I'm not really sure. There's even fire hydrant lines that go through there because there was going to be a development there at some point, but it never materialized. So I was kind of surprised to see all those kinds of things. One of the questions that I do have is this lead service area. Are these mostly older homes?
Anything before 1988. 1988 was when Ohio adopted the federal rule. Federal rule took effect in 86, I believe. It gave the states some time to comply. So anything after that, there's no lead.
Okay.
Before that, there's certain developments that you don't know.
All right, thank
In
you.
all likelihood, most likely not, but depending upon the age, the further back you go, the more of a possibility it becomes.
So in this area that I described to you about along Avondale and stuff, how many parcels does the water company own back in that area? Do we have any idea? Could I get a map? and potentially
Along
identify-
Avondale?
Or those four potential streets, because there was 4 streets that were all in that area.
We do not own any in that area. The property that we purchased from ALERG is the only property in that specific area.
Okay.
There are parcels that are owned by the city of Avon Lake. There are some private residents, and then, as you know,
CEI.
yes, CEI.
Yeah, we've had conversations
Yes.
about it. I was just curious. I don't know if I've ever asked you for the number
Yeah,
of parcels.
we do not, the utilities does not own any of those except for what we just bought.
If the purchase of this park area goes through. There's a drain that comes from the pond that is just south of Lake Road and then funnels over to a storm drain, into the storm drain system that then feeds out into the lake. If that gets purchased and they start excavating and stuff, is there going to have to be a removal of that pipe and move to another place? Because I know you and I have chatted about the potential of some kind of fallout from materials that would be if there was dredging and things like that, and then potentially the moving of water intakes that could even go farther out into the lake. I'm just curious as to whether or not this drainage area would have to be fixed.
So the retention pond area that is on the property that we now own, that property is not connected to anything on the north side of Lake Road. The retention pond that discharges into the 108-inch storm sewer. So there's no connection on the north side any longer.
No, going to the east of the plant, I understand, but I thought this drain, this 108-inch pipe was on the west side, and that was been approved. You know, I've heard stories at other meetings about how it got approved. It wasn't probably done properly, blah, blah, blah. And Howard had a conflict of interest because he was supposed to be the one who had done the architectural work on it. I'm just curious if they start excavating back there and moving stuff around, what happens to this pipe?
Well, the 108-inch is on our property. It actually comes from the Walker Road direction, comes all the way across property we own. It then comes across the new property we own on the south side. It then kind of 45s and starts to head to the west as it goes into Miller Road Park, and then ultimately is an outfall. On the north side of Lake Road, if they started to excavate over there, then obviously, yes, they would have to take that along with other utilities, take that into consideration.
Because one of my concerns is with this TIF and everything, if the redevelopment of this area occurs and someone starts making all kinds of new development in the area, they have to do all this sanitation work. They'll have to lay pipe, dredge. There's going to be all kinds of things. And then the TIF money ends up going to help to pay for those renovations or improvements or however you want to describe it. And so from my standpoint, the TIF money can be misleading because now all of a sudden it's going for the development of this area and never going to see its way back to the schools. All right. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Let's see, we have a motion for an executive session. Would someone like to? I'm sorry.
Before we make the motion, Mr. Chairman, I just want to state that based on discussion in the executive session, the board may take action after.
Okay. All right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Good.
Prior to this executive session, we talked about possibly inviting additional person to the
Right,
executive session.
definitely.
Can you explain the process behind that? Was there a posting or,
Yes, we with the upcoming resignation by Mr. Abram that will be effective December 31st, we did advertise for any interested parties for the board, that vacant seat, to fulfill his remainder 1 year of his term. And we did receive a letter of interest and resume from Mr. Nick Mondello, and I would like to include him as part of the executive session so that the board can have a chance to interview him.
Okay.
and for clarification, be a portion of the meeting?
Right. You wouldn't be invited to anything.
Correct. It would just be for
Not
that specific portion, and then when we're finished, then we would ask him to leave.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sounds like a tall order here, Mr. Rush, so why don't you take it on?
Sure. I move to meet in executive session as allowed by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22, G1 and G2, to discuss the employment of a public employee and the purchase and or sale of public property, and to include the CUE, the CUO, legal counsel, and Mr. Nick Mondello.
Thank you, Mr. Rush.
Can we add the
Mr.
business and financial coordinator to that as
Okay,
well?
and,
Okay,
and to amend that to include the business and financial coordinator.
okay, thank you, Mr. Rush. Is there a
I'll
second?
second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Mr. Abram. Roll call vote, Mr. Ricky.
Yes.
Mrs. Schnabel,
Yes.
Mr. Abram.
Aye.
Mr. Rush.
Yes,
And chairman votes yes. So we will go into executive session when the room is cleared. And Mr. Mondell, please